over at BangTheBook.com. Big news for us here this morning. Kyle Hunter is writing a college basketball picks piece on a daily basis for us over there at the website. Obviously, he still has his clients and things of that sort, so these won't be premium plays, but they will be leans, derivative plays that he can't sell anywhere because they can't be tracked, stuff like that. But we're very, very excited to have Kyle taking on more of a role for us at BangTheBook.com. We'll have 2 segments with him on the podcast once we get past the football season. So lots of good stuff coming your way from Kyle over at BangTheBook.com, as well as updated NFL power ratings coming this week from Danny Vorgs. I've previewed all 4 NFL wildcard weekend games. Also put up my national championship preview this morning. Golf preview up over there as well. We got a lot of great content. Please make sure that you check it all out. And, of course, a new month has started, so those monthly contests have reset over there at BangTheBook.com. Also, you can do our daily streaker at any time. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB200 is the promo code. It will get you a 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook up to $500, and the same thing for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. 2 guests on the program today. We'll start things off with professional handicapper Bryan Leonard from WagerTalk.com. Bryan, how's it going today, man?
Everything's going great, and I'm excited about some of the additions that you're doing over there on the website. You mentioned Kyle Hunter. I've never had the chance to speak to him or meet him, but you can tell he puts in a lot of work, and as does your hockey handicapper. So you've got some really good people over on your site, and obviously you're a great writer yourself. So it's a place that I like to visit as much as I can, and you guys are doing a great job.
No, I certainly appreciate that, Bryan, and that hockey guy, Parker Michaels. Great breakdown here of today's NHL card, and he does that on a daily basis over at the website as well. Bryan, for all intents and purposes here, I guess we'll start with just sort of recapping the college football bowl season. For all intents and purposes, that's over now. Last night's Sugar Bowl, the last of the bowl games, just the national championship left to go. How'd you do during the bowl season, and was there anything that, maybe you look to incorporate a little bit more next year?
We ended up going 10-5, but I think I had 3 of those losses by a combined 2 points. It was one of those seasons where if I'd have teased all my plays, I would have won just about everything, but you don't tease college football. At least I don't tease college football, but it turned out pretty much what I thought it was going to be. The teams, I talked about teams that were running the football, other than Georgia Tech, which was my big loser in the bowls. You had a team that could run the football, and Coach Johnson, his last game. That one, the effort that the Yellow Jackets gave in that game was not what I expected. And so that was my one, if you're going to put up a clunker, that was a major clunker for me because Georgia Tech just was never in that game. But basically, if you're playing the teams that can run the football, you're always going to be in those games. Going against certain conferences, which has shown the inability to win in the playoffs or the bowl games, and the Pac-12s and the MACs and those type of schools, where continuously, once they jump up in class, they don't perform well. In fact, the Pac-12, as bad as the basketball has been, the last few years, how can you even count them as a Big Five conference anymore? Because they just have not done well outside the conference when they're stepping up in class. And so that's something, at least in basketball, I also like to look to fade. But it's worked out pretty well. The teams that you didn't think were going to show up, like last night, Georgia, or you had a play on Texas yesterday, and the teams that had something, had a really good season and wanted to continue it, like in Kentucky. They performed well once again. So if you could try to get yourself into the mind of these players and read as much as you can on how excited they are to be there and what they're going to, what they're looking to accomplish, you can pick out some nice winners along the way, and it's worked out pretty good for us. And to be totally honest with you, I've never had great success in the bowls. This is probably the best season I've had in the last 5 years. So it's a learning experience every year, and just try to get better on it. And, I'll take a 10-5 any day.
All right, we'll come back to college in a little bit here and talk about the national championship game. But before we get to Clemson, Alabama, Part 3 for the championship anyway, Part 4 overall, we've got the NFL wild card weekend here. And let's go ahead and start with the first game on the board, game 101-102, Indianapolis and Houston. And a lot of us have been expecting Indianapolis money to come in on this game. That is the case. Houston opened a 2.5-point favorite. You notice it wasn't the full 3 there. Now Indianapolis down as low as +1 in some places. You agree with this move here, Brian?
I do. The Colts, to me, are the team you need to watch out for in the AFC right now. They're just playing great ball. You've got one of the top quarterbacks in the league. You've got a defense that has come out of nowhere this year and performed very well. The Colts are a team that I've been looking to play on, the second half of the season. Houston's a team that had their big winning streak, but when you go back and look at the teams they played, they were either all good situational plays for Houston or they were playing lesser teams. So as much as I like the Houston offense, the consistency just hasn't been there for Houston. For myself, 47.5, if you can get that Indy over 7 and get to 7.5 or higher with the tease, I think that's the best way to go in this one. In fact, there are a lot of nice teaser candidates here for the playoffs in this round. But Indy's a team that I've been very impressed with. They're believing in themselves, and they had a lot of injuries last year, and this year they've been rather healthy. And you go back and at the end of the season and see the teams, regardless of college or pro, the ones that haven't had a lot of injuries are the teams that usually end up playing well on the season. If you've got a team that was healthy and they still played lousy, that's not looking good for the following season. That's one of the things we can always take a look at when we're looking at seasonal wins. Warren Sharp puts out a book earlier in the season, his football preview, and he goes through how many games were lost by injury by these teams, and if it was key players. And offensive line, defensive line is always important for taking a look at injuries and that kind of thing. So, it really helps going into the following season to look at injuries. But Indy's a team I don't want to step in front of right now. They're playing very well, and they know how to play Houston, divisional rivals, and it'll be a nice game. But I'm looking to play Indy probably on the teaser here.
Yeah, I mean, this is one, and I mentioned this in one of the previews I wrote, taking Seattle up to 8.5 and Indianapolis up to 8.5, probably the best play on Saturday, teasing both of those teams up. But, for the Colts here, I mean, they moved the ball very effectively in both games against Houston, threw the ball very effectively. Another thing that I noticed in my preview here, and there are a few games that do kind of line up this way, Indianapolis much better in the red zone. They're 5th offensively in touchdown percentage, just outside the top 10. They're 11th defensively in touchdown percentage in the red zone. Houston, 27th on offense, 29th on defense. Those are the types of things I think you have to look for in these one-off playoff samples because, that could be the difference in this game. Houston getting 3 and Indianapolis getting 7.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, you take a look at individual stats, and I know Ryan of Atlanta just had a tremendous season from getting yardage and his passing overall, but they weren't able to get the ball in the end zone, and so it was an afterthought all season long. But Matt Ryan had a great season, but if you can't get the ball in, when you're down there, get in for the touchdown, you have to kick field goals. It definitely makes a difference. And I know when I'm watching a game, and if a team is looking to go for it, they say they're in the red zone and they're looking to go for it or kick the field goal on 4th down, as a player or as a rooter for the opponent team, the defense, I want them to kick the field goal. I don't want for them to go for it. Number one, if you're going for it and you're getting the touchdown, obviously that's twice as bad, with the extra point even worse. But number two is usually it makes the defensive team, when they turn over to offense, if they do stop them, they've got a long way to go. So that's one of the things I use when I'm taking a look at in-game betting, is a lot of people don't pay attention to where the ball is going to be after that. All he sees the points. And as we saw in that Michigan State-Oregon game, Oregon was backed up close to the end zone for pretty much the entire game as Michigan State was playing the field position game. Once Oregon got that last drive late in the game where they had some breathing room, it was a different story. They scored the touchdown, win the game. So pay attention to how these teams do in the red zone. And it's a big difference for wherever the opposition starts. So it's a major concern for Atlanta this year, and it's something, as you mentioned in this game, that could go down to who wins this one.
One last thing I'll ask you about with regards to this game, Brian. Indianapolis, in that win or go home scenario against Tennessee on Sunday Night Football, they do come away with the win. But that was the late game on Sunday night, travel back from Nashville to Indianapolis, Monday a wasted day, and now you play on a short week on Saturday afternoon against Houston. How much of a concern is that for you with the Colts?
Well, normally it would be a concern, but this is a team they play all the time, and they're playing twice a season. They know all about them. It's sort of like what we've talked about with the Thursday night football games. If you're playing a team that you already play twice a season, it doesn't take as long to get up to date on them. So it would be a concern if they were playing, the Chargers or somebody else in the AFC here. But for Houston, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
All right, let's go to the late game on Saturday, game 103-104, Seattle and Dallas. Some places open 3, some places open 2.5 with extra juice, but it's been pretty one-sided Seattle money here so far in this game. That come as a shock to you, Brian?
It doesn't come as a shock because Seattle's taken a lot of money overall lately, and Dallas hasn't had the best of records when it comes to playing in the playoffs, but I'm not sure the better team is taking the money here. Seattle, to me, has been a fade. I faded them out of a personal bet against Arizona last week. And Arizona could have come out and won that game as a 13-point underdog. Just Seattle's one of those teams that needs to run the football, but Dallas is a team that can stop that run. So these are two teams really that want to run the football. When you take a look at throwing deep downfield, the only time it usually happens for either one of these teams is if it's pretty much a broken play and they've got a wide open guy. So most of them are conservative, running the football, short passing. Seattle, obviously, with the quarterback with some legs, they're going to try to get him out and get some running yardage out of that. But I'm kind of surprised by where the line has moved, and I'm also a little surprised with the total. It opened 41.5. Now I'm seeing 44s out there. I see this being a field goal type of game and more field goals than touchdowns. And that total is getting to the point now. It's at 44. It goes much higher. I might have to bite on that under.
Well, this is the hardest game of the weekend for me, I think, because I think Dallas does have a better roster. I think Dallas clearly does have the better defense, and Dak Prescott has really elevated his game since they got Amari Cooper. But you talk about situational play here. The Seahawks, much better on third down than the Cowboys. Cowboys, despite that good defense, 27th in opponent's third down conversion rate. Seattle was 5th defensively on third down. And then the red zone comes into play here as well. Cowboys a touchdown on only 48% of their red zone trips. That's 29th in the NFL. Seattle, 8th offensively, 4th defensively. So Seattle better on third down, better in the red zone. I think they have the better coach as well. But Dallas has the better roster, and they're at home in this one. So this is a tough game for me.
There's no doubt that Seattle's got the better coach, and that's the only concern you would ever have if you ever play in Dallas. But I know it's a small sample size, but when you take a look at home and away this year, Seattle has not performed very well on the road. And for once, Dallas actually is playing well at home. There was many times that we would just look to play against Dallas and home play on them on the road, and you made a lot of money. This year it's different. Dallas has played better at home. But Seattle, when you take a look at what they've done at home and what they've done on the road, not nearly as strong on the road. And that's a concern when you do have, obviously if this game was being played in Seattle, a night game in Seattle against Dallas, that crowd would make a big difference in this game, and they don't have that behind them here. So that is a concern. But as for the coaching, hands down, Seattle's got the better head coach. And if you're looking to play Dallas, you're looking at the players are going to win this game and not the coaching staff.
Well, here's something I do want to ask you about then, because with Dallas opening a 3-point favorite or a 2.5-point favorite here, I mean, I think that the standard for home field advantage in the NFL is somewhere around 2.25 points. You can correct me if I'm wrong there with that. But Dallas has had one of the least home field advantages from a point spread standpoint over the last little while. So with this number opening 2.5 or 3, I think some people imply that this is a pick 'em on a neutral, but I think Dallas would be a 1-point favorite or so on a neutral. That was pretty telling to me when this number came out.
Yeah, it really was. And I saw it at 2.5 originally, and it was being bet up to 2.5 minus 120. And I said, if you want Dallas, you better get on it now because it's not going to be there very long. And it was a surprise when money came in on Seattle here. And you're right, they have not played well at home as of late. But playoff games as compared to regular season games, I've never done any charting on it. But there's certain games in which a team will get up for at home. Obviously, the playoffs are a big game. Dallas has played a lot of divisional rivals where they just don't seem to get up for certain teams. Either the fans aren't there. And when you've got, it's nice to have that many fans in the building, but if they're not vocal fans, it doesn't really help you at all. Seattle, as I mentioned, that's a place where, Drew Fortenbaugh is a friend of ours, does radio out in San Francisco, and he went to Seattle one day. He says you couldn't even talk to the person next to you because it was so loud in Seattle, and I've never had the privilege to be there. That tells you a lot about how tough it is for the road teams to play in Seattle, and most of that is, the offensive line not getting the snap, false starts, and that kind of thing. So that's a huge advantage for Seattle at home that they're not going to have here.
All right, so let's go over to Sunday and the Chargers taking on the Baltimore Ravens. And this is a real bummer for the Chargers because this spot is a challenge. I mean, you talk about a team that went 12-4. They got to go on the road because they didn't win their division, and they play a 10 a.m. kickoff against the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore 2.5-point favorite in this one, total 41.5.
It's also a team they played before too, and that was a game where I believe I was on the Chargers, and I believe Baltimore won that game. But Baltimore's another one of those sitting there at the 2.5, minus 10, minus 15. I got to tell you, I had the Browns last week as one of my plays, and I was very impressed by this Baltimore running game. They were just picking up yards in chunks against the Browns defense. And, the Browns defense has been pretty good. It hasn't been great. But if you can, this, when you're playing a sport, so you're doing something that nobody else does. For example, when Oregon came out and went crazy in college football, spread the field all over the place, they were crushing people because they don't see that on a regular basis. Now you're looking at a team like Baltimore who is doing opposite of what everybody else is doing in the NFL, and that gives them a little bit of an advantage, sort of like playing the military schools in college football. Teams don't see that very often, and it's a different mindset. You've really got to have a strong mindset to play defense against this Baltimore team because they've got big running backs. They've got a fast quarterback that could easily gain 100 yards a game. And even though he's not the greatest passer, when you are beating a team down left and right in the running game, it's going to open up some chances to take advantage in the passing game. So I was very impressed by Baltimore last week. I haven't had a chance to see them on a weekly basis, but they performed a lot better than what and one of the things I always look at is turnovers. And when you're running the football and you've got an excellent defense like Baltimore has, you're not going to turn the football over. And that's the one thing that gives them such an advantage when you're looking at turnovers is you know what you're going to get out of them. And even though they got the rookie quarterback, he's been very good. He hasn't turned the ball over. I love this Chargers team, and they've been very good on the road. They're, like we've talked about in the past, they have hardly any home field advantage. These are two teams I want to bet on here, and I really don't know what I could do in here other than taking the Chargers, as you mentioned earlier, up above 8 with that teaser and a low game, 41.5 is your total here. I think that's a pretty good bet. But I haven't decided on if I'm going to play the side of this or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone back and forth on this game because, like you said, Baltimore's doing something different, and that makes it tough to defend. The problem is this is the first time Baltimore will play a team for the second time with Lamar Jackson as the quarterback. So Gus Bradley in this Chargers defense, has seen this scheme, has seen what Lamar Jackson wants to do. Of course, it's very tough to defend improvisation if that's what Jackson winds up doing, but the Chargers do at least have the luxury of having seen this. Also, when these two teams first played, that's when Ken Wisenhunt's name was being talked about for the Georgia Tech job. So maybe he was a little bit distracted in the game planning for this Baltimore defense. But the spot, it's so hard for me because you've got a Baltimore team that can run the football. So you want the Chargers to start fast, but it's 10 a.m. for them. And starting fast is not easy with this cross-country trip.
If this was a regular season game, I'd understand it. But once you get to the playoffs, the spots, the situational plays, they don't work because this is what both teams are out there trying to give it all. This is the playoffs. You lose, you go home. In a regular season, I think it means so much more than it does in the
All right, well, let's go to the last game here for the wild card weekend on Sunday, game 107-108, Philadelphia and Chicago. Some Philadelphia money leaking into the market now. We were in the 4.5, 5 range, got bet up to 6. Now we've got several 5.5s out there in the marketplace. Brian, I mean, this one's, kind of your quintessential NFL handicap. Elite defense against offense. It looks pretty good with Nick Foles at the helm.
Definitely does. And if you're looking for the seasonal stats here, you're doing a disservice. As Foles has really played well once again for Philadelphia. And as a personal note, I'm very glad because I like Nick Foles. Everything I've heard about him is all positive, and I want him to have success as opposed to a lot of these egomaniac quarterbacks out there in which they think they're the life of the party. But I do like this game. I think the points right now may be a little bit high. I'm hoping it gets bet up again. I'd like to take Philadelphia here because with Foles behind center, the Eagles have played a lot better ball. I also think it'll be a low-scoring game, and obviously with a total of 41, you're expecting that. But you've got two quarterbacks that when you take a look at their passing yardage and their passing success, when they throw long, they're two of the lowest-rated quarterbacks in the NFL. So both quarterbacks will want to run the football and play the short passing game, and both of these defenses are also going to be very good at stopping the run and the short passing game. So points will come as a premium in this one, a total of 41 right now. I wish it'd be a little bit higher before I could take a look at the under. But if I could get a full 6 minus 110, I'll be on Philadelphia. Right now, as you're pointing out, we're looking at 5.5, 110. And you could get a 6, but you're going to have to pay more than minus 110. So I'm not going to get involved until I probably get that number. But this line's been bouncing up and down a little bit. Philadelphia's a different team now than they were earlier in the season. And we also have a team that went all the way through the playoffs to the Super Bowl last year and won it against a rookie quarterback in Chicago with Trubisky. So I would much prefer getting the points with the veteran team that's been there before. But we will have to see if I can get that 6 minus 110 before I get involved.
That is a big factor of this game, that whole been there, done that type of factor, and we'll talk about that here in a couple of seconds with the national championship game. But one thing I want to ask you about here, Brian, you have to really dig deep into these playoff games because these lines are very efficient, very, very tight. You've got Doug Peterson here, who was the former offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs under Andy Reid, and you've got Matt Nagy, the former offensive coordinator for the Chiefs under Andy Reid. And Matt Nagy was the quarterback's coach when Doug Peterson was the OC. So a lot of familiarity here in this game. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means that both teams should know what the other is going to try to do here. The problem is knowing what they're going to do and stopping it may be two different things. But we see this a lot of times in college football where you have two teams that basically run the same type of offense, that kind of thing. You know what they're going to try to do, and they see it all the time in practice, so the defense is having an advantage. And that's one other reason why I think this is going to be a low-scoring game here is both teams know what the other's trying to do offensively, as you pointed out, and the defenses, at least from the Philadelphia side, from the Chicago side, is so much better than the offense. So it's going to be a struggle. This is going to be a real game where points are in a premium, and this is one of those that if you're live betting, you may be able to take advantage of that. So I really love live betting when it comes to this time of season, because normally in the regular season, teams get a lead and they just suck the out of it and just try to get out of there. But many times, that by doing that, the opposition gets back into the game. And a lot of times you're playing a team twice in a season, or you're going to face them again. You don't want to embarrass them. Once you get to the playoffs, there's no worry about embarrassing. Which is why one of the reasons why New England's had so much success in the playoffs is they just put the foot to the metal, pedal to the metal, and they're always trying to get more points. The more points they get, the better, and they don't care if they embarrass somebody, because they're not going to get backdoored. And we saw it in the Super Bowl when they played Atlanta. Atlanta took it easy, and then all of a sudden Atlanta loses the Super Bowl. So when you are playing this and you see one team has got an advantage, normally I would be looking to come back the other way in a regular season game. But if you're playing live betting here, if you see a team that the other team can't stop what they're doing, just continue to play on that team. It's a different way to look at live betting. The playoffs are a totally different game.
All right, so let's talk college football national championship game next Monday here. And this thing's basically become like the Super Bowl in terms of the prop betting options that are out there. Haven't seen a ton of props listed as of yet, but Brian, I'm sure you and I will be tapping into those here later in the week, and then, of course, on game day as well. But seeing Clemson money this morning, some of the sharper offshores, Bookmaker and Pinnacle down to 5, a lot of 5.5s out there, a couple 6s still as well. This is the first real heavy movement we've seen on the Clemson side so far. Brian, what do you think about Alabama as a 5.5-point favorite out at Levi's Stadium for the national championship game?
Yeah, they came out at the Golden Nugget a couple months ago with this. It might not have been a couple months ago. Maybe it was last month. I don't remember. But they came out look-ahead line, and it was 8. Problem is, you didn't know if the game was going to be these two. You didn't want them to hold your money for that long, so I don't know how much action they got on it, but there was a few people that I know of that took the 8 just in case this game does come about. And to be honest with you, we all thought this was going to be the championship game. I don't know anybody who didn't think that Clemson and Alabama were the two best teams in college football. So we've gone from the 8, which was not a lot of people interested in it, but now we've gotten down, as you mentioned, Pinnacle Bookmaker at 5. You can still catch 6.5 at Bovada for your $500 if they let you bet that. But money's coming in on Clemson, and I understand that it's still it's tough for me because I've liked this Clemson team all season long. I love the quarterback at Clemson. He's a veteran freshman, which is you never see very often. Is the guy plays like a senior and he is a freshman. Alabama showed some weaknesses a little bit against Oklahoma, but still they were typical Alabama. They did what they had to do, and Oklahoma couldn't stop them, and we knew that coming in. It was just the point of how many points would Alabama be able to get, Oklahoma able to get in that game against Alabama. So I could see the money coming in on Clemson. Problem is, I still have Alabama as the highest-rated team I've had in probably ever. So Clemson plays very well against Alabama. This is one of the few, if any, coaching advantages that isn't there for Saban. Dabo Swinney has been terrific as a head coach for Clemson. I love what he does with the players. The kids love him. I can't guarantee you that the Alabama kids love Nick Saban, but he gets the best out of them. And these teams, as you mentioned, the last 4 years they faced each other, or the last 3 years. So they know each other very well. You know what you're going to get out of this. The line, the total open 60 down to 59.5. I kind of like the under here, but I don't know if I want to go down below 59.5 because these offenses can be explosive. This is a tough pick for me right now. If the line was 6, 7, I'd be on Clemson. If the line was 4, I'd be on Alabama, and we're in that general area in between. So it may be a game I don't even play on. It may be a game where I have to play, as you mentioned, the props or something like that to get to what I want to get. But I've thought this game all season long was going to be a 6-point Alabama. We're at 5 right now, so don't know if I'm going to get involved. But it's the two best teams by far in my regard. Regardless of what Georgia did yesterday, I think Georgia was also in the top 3. Oklahoma probably number 4. But I'm torn on this.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly understand that. And I think that, once again, as I mentioned, the prop betting market is the way to attack this game. Really, it's the way to attack the Super Bowl, quite frankly, too. I mean, in theory, this should be the absolute tightest line of the year. And this one between Clemson and Alabama certainly looks like it to me. I mean, if you grabbed an early number on Clemson with a look-ahead line, I think I saw 5 dimes at 7.5 or 8. That was the way to go. Right now, I just don't know how much equity there is in this number out there. But the props, definitely something that you want to look into. Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper over at WagerTalk.com. What's going on over there right now, Bryan?
We didn't do videos last week because of the holidays, but we've got extra guys coming in. Carmen Bianco is in this week. He's excellent soccer, hockey handicapper. Tremendous run. I think he's 19-1 in hockey. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Some of these streaks are going. Marco D'Angelo is having a terrific season. Rolf Michaels on your show, he's been terrific as of late, just on fire. And it's hard for me to get a word in anyway, even though I'm winning a little bit. But when these other guys are just so hot, it's just ridiculous lately. So if you're looking to join the winners, watch the videos this week, and hopefully we can make you some more money.
You can follow Bryan on Twitter at BLeonardSports. Check out his work over at WagerTalk.com. Bryan Leonard, appreciate the time as always, sir. Thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds great. Talk to you then. Good luck, everyone.